Hello, everyone, and good morning. So thanks for joining us for this week's first sutta study. And this morning we have Ayya Soma, who will be sharing with us a sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya. So if you'd like to follow along during the talk, you can click the link to the sutta in the live chat. And if you have questions at any time, feel free to type them in, and we'll address them at the end of the talk. And good morning so far to Alexandra, Kumu, Kyle, Gita, Nancy, Jens, and Robin, and Kristen. And good morning as well to all of our other viewers and friends watching without typing in. So at this time, I'll pass things over to Ayya Soma for this morning's sutta study.
All right, thank you very much, Bhante Suvano. So we can start by paying homage to our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So this morning we will be reading from Anguttara Nikaya 686, the Avarana Sutta, obstruction. And we have Venerable Nisabho that you don't see. He's a friend who has visited here at the monastery, but you will be seeing a lot of him in the next couple of days. So currently that is my obstruction that I'm facing this morning in talking, the anxiety. I'm going to say something stupid. So I'm probably going to say a lot of stupid things because normally that's what happens. But let's see what the Buddha has to say about the obstructions that we find in the path. So we can start by reading the sutta. Since it's a very short sutta, we can take the time to contemplate on the words of the Buddha first by ourselves, and then we can analyze it together afterwards. So I will be reading actually from my translation, but you will have the copy of Bhante Sujato. Okay, I was not sure if it was Bhante Bodhis or Bhante Sujato. So you can see the different ways through which our minds translate the words of the Buddha. So the sutta begins. Monks, endowed with 6 things, upon hearing the true Dhamma, one is unable to enter the right way in developing good qualities. What 6? One has obstructions based on action. One has obstructions based on defilement. One has obstructions based on the consequence of their action. One does not have faith, does not have zeal, and has bad wisdom. In this way, monks, endowed with 6 things, upon hearing the true Dhamma, one is unable to enter the right way in developing good qualities. Monks, endowed with 6 things, upon hearing the true Dhamma, one is able to enter the right way in developing good qualities. What 6? One does not have obstructions based on action. One does not have obstructions based on defilement. One does not have obstructions based on the consequence of their action. One has faith, zeal, and wisdom. In this way, monks, endowed with 6 things, upon hearing the true Dhamma, one is able to enter the right way in developing good qualities. So we can close our eyes and contemplate these verses for a few moments. All right. When I first read this sutta, it really made an impact in my mind, which is why this morning I was feeling like sharing it, because I've been contemplating these verses a bit here and there, actually during the winter retreat. I'm really looking at my experience and seeing how were these words relevant. But first and foremost, it's important to, kind of understand what the Buddha is talking about in the first place. So the Buddha says, upon hearing the true Dhamma, one is unable to enter the right way in developing good qualities. And this is actually a stock phrase that we find throughout the suttas that I personally decided to translate the right way in developing good qualities, but Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's a lot more skilled than I am, afterwards, I checked his translation, as I normally do after I translate with Pali these days. I always check what Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi has chosen as words and trying to understand why I didn't pick the same words. And so he talks about it in fixed course consisting in rightness of wholesome qualities. This is how he mentions it. I'm not sure how Venerable Sujato.
He uses the sure path.
The sure path. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so both of them, contrarily to myself, highlighted the inevitability of certain things that we put in motion that put us in the path of stream entry. So fundamentally, this is what this sutta is aiming at. So the fact that if we put certain components, certain pieces together, this sutta as well as other suttas, then there's a sort of inevitability of our destination, which is Nibbana. So very, very good news. And in fact, I was actually doing a little bit of research on the word jnana itself. And apparently throughout the centuries, there have been several debates among all the different scholars, etc., which I won't go into this morning, but it's very interesting how there is the connotation of this path of assurance. This is how it's spoken with. And that basically has either, as in this sutta is mentioned, a sammatta jnana, so like the right sort of path as a destination, or it can have a wrong destination, so micchatta jnana. And the latter is, of course, if we do the five cardinal crimes, so to speak. So like if we kill our parents, if we kill an arahat, or if we kill a Buddha, or if we cause a schism in the Buddhist Sangha, then that will inevitably prevent us from entering the stream. And so the Buddha says, so what are these 6 obstructions? And the first one, he says, one has obstructions based on action, so based on kamma that they're making. We see in different suttas, actually, which I'm going to mention this morning, the Buddha gives a bit of more elaboration on what these obstructions based on action can be. And for example, in Anguttara Nikaya 5.152, he says, for example, when listening to the Dhamma, one disparages the talk, one disparages the speaker, and one disparages oneself. These are some of the things he says, not all of them. But I found it very interesting how one disparages oneself. We had just recently a talk on self-hatred is also an obstruction in entering the noble path, right? So we should be aware that it's something that we are doing. So right now, for example, my mind is going, I'm incompetent, I'm going to say this, and while listening to myself, I'm also speaking to myself, and I'm like, oh, that could have been said better, big obstruction that I'm actually doing, right? But also when we're listening to others. So perhaps now you're there and you're like, wow, this talk is terrible. what is that bhikkhuni saying? What is she doing? She should be looking in this way or in this other way. She shouldn't be moving those arms like those Italians do. So these are all actions that we're engaging in that fundamentally become an obstruction in the path. And of course, in Anguttara Nikaya 687, the Buddha talks about the big unwholesome actions that we just briefly spoke about the 5 about killing mother, father, arahat, harming an arahat, and creating a schism in the Sangha. And then in Anguttara Nikaya 688, he says, when the Dhamma and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata is being taught, one does not wish to listen. One does not lend an ear. One does not set one's mind on understanding. One grasps the meaning wrongly. One discards the meaning. And one has adopted a conviction that is not in conformity with the teaching. So the latter one is probably, in my opinion, more in the realm of vipaka. So we see other things that we do whenever we're listening to the Dhamma. So what the Buddha recommends in other places over and over again is to lend an ear, to listen to the Dhamma as if it was a matter of life and death, a vital concern. So that is the right action that we should be always putting effort in putting in place. And we should put effort in not doing all of these other things that we normally, our mind tends to gravitate towards. You know, we do not wish to listen. Like, oh, really? I'd like to have breakfast now. Again, we already have breakfast at 7. much better. I would like to go on Facebook and chat with my friends or see what they're doing, or all sorts of things that prevents us from really listening to the Dhamma. And then from there, of course, we have the consequence that either we don't listen to the Dhamma at all, but we grasp it incorrectly because perhaps we've heard 3 words out of 10 and we start creating a whole story of what actually the teachings of the Buddha are, which are not in conformity with the teachings. And the Buddha says then, keeps going and says, one has obstructions based on defilement. Defilement, our good old friends that permeate our state of existence. I remember Ajahn Jayanto, when he came here, the abbot of Temple Forest Monastery, he was telling us about the first, the early days at Amaravati. And the monks were having a lot of different, types of distress between one another. But it was so sweet because at a certain point it was like, this monk turned around the other one and was like, it's not that I hate you, but I really hate your defilements. And it's so relatable in a way, in the sense that we tend to think that we actually, hate the person that is behaving unskillfully. Perhaps that person can also be ourselves, as we were, saying earlier in terms of when it comes to self-hatred. But what we really actually should realize is that it's not about the person, whether it's this person or the other person or the other people, groups of people perhaps, but rather their kilesas, their defilements of mind. And so we should only ever wish for ourselves and others to attain awakening for the benefit of ourselves and others. That's all. If we remove the kilesas, then actually this is pretty pleasant. We don't need to remove the person. We don't need to become a different person. As Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, I always love that quote, said, you're perfect just the way you are, and you need a little work. And the little the work is removing the kilesas. So the mind is beautiful. The mind is luminous, as the Buddha says. Luminous is the mind. It's just that it's tainted by these kilesas. And so what are exactly these kilesas? What are these defilements of mind? Well, Bhikkhu Bodhi really skillfully splits it in sort of three kind of areas that are, I find it very, very useful to think in this way. So fundamentally, he talks about the defilements of course, greed, hatred, and delusion, the poisons that then inspire our wrong action. So our bad karma. Then he speaks about it in terms of the hindrances that then impede the meditation. And then he speaks about it in terms of those defilements of mind that are latent in the mind, that then need to require a little bit more work, that need to be uprooted with wisdom and insight. And the Buddha in Anguttara Nikaya 5.151 describes a little bit this process. And so what are we doing when we have obstructions based on defilements? And the Buddha says, one listens to the Dhamma with a distracted and scattered mind. Sounds familiar? Perhaps if it's early in the morning or late at night. We're like, a bit sleepy, forgot to have our coffee. We also have the delusion to be living forever, and to be listening to talks or verses from the suttas over and over again, endlessly. So we're like, whatever, even if I don't grasp this one, the next one, next time, tomorrow. But maybe tomorrow never comes. So mindfulness of death, contemplating, remembering that we're subject to old age, sickness, and death, and that tomorrow might not come in the way that we might not be able to listen to the Dhamma, is a powerful antidote for a distracted and scattered mind, and also to attending to it carelessly. So we want to establish that sense of urgency. And then the Buddha proceeds into suttas after that, saying, one listens to the Dhamma as a denigrator obsessed with denigration. And similar to the one, but with a different nuance, similar to the ones based on karma, one listens to the Dhamma with the intention of criticizing it, seeking faults. So in the way that, we're not actually quite doing the action yet, but we have that intention, which is informed by our defilements. And I have to say, actually, before starting Buddhist Insights, I had a bit of that. I remember I would go to some of the talks with that sort of tainted mind. Luckily, I was able to turn that hindrance in something skillful. So I was very interested in listening to monastics. So then I was like, okay, well, I can't find the talks that I want. And all the ones that I want are given by all these monks away in the forest, not in cities. So let's create the conditions for the monks to come to the city. So that was a good way for it. But the way that I was approaching what I had available on hand was very unskillful, and in hindsight, and was actually then, the condition to strengthen all the defilements of mind. So now I still have the vipaka of it. Isn't it great when you realize actually that all of your dukkha has a cause and that you've created a lot of that, It's very easy to pinpoint that uncomfortable mind, uncomfortable state of being that we have to experience most of the time. a few weeks ago, Bhante Sumano was sharing with us how he remembers the days when he's irritated. Really made us an impact, in the community. He's got such a really lovely mind full of metta. And it's so beautiful, to see that actually he remembers the days when he's irritated, because I was like, oh, I remember the days when I'm not irritated. But it's also beautiful to see that actually it's possible to not be irritated all the time if you're an aversive type, and also to remember why. Recollect, why is it that my mind is experiencing irritation most of the time? Well, it's not something random. It's not because I was born this way. It's not that my mom taught me to be irritated 24/7 or maybe 22/7. But rather it's something that I started doing, and creating that habit then creates those consequences that then fuel themselves, and we end up in this endless cycle, which then seems like it's impossible to break out of. But when we realize that it's something that we are doing, even if it's a strong habit, then we can train ourselves to do the opposite over and over again. And then we can have some release here and there. And then that release can increase, and it becomes to the point where you remember when you get irritated rather than the opposite. And the Buddha says, one of the obstruction is one does not have faith. Actually, this is very much connected and related to what I was also saying, what I just shared. So when we do not have faith, then we very much identify with what we think we are. So I can identify with, I am the grumpy, irritable Italian monk, whatever. There are X, Y, and Z things that define who I am. And it's impossible to break out of that because that is me. But instead, when we actually approach the teachings with a different mind, with a mind that this is my current conditions and it's possible to break out of them, and we take these teachings as working hypothesis, even if sometimes they sound so bizarre, so distant from our experience. But instead of like approaching them and saying, well, they're definitely different from my experience. I'm pretty sure I am this person. What is this, story about non-self? I don't know about that. But rather going, okay, well, this is my experience. And this is what the Buddha says. How about I take what the Buddha says as a working hypothesis? How about I try and prove the Buddha wrong? Well, preview. It's impossible to prove the Buddha wrong. And that actually builds first faith and then strengthens it and creates the conditions for us to move forward in the path. Because whenever we practice in accordance with Dhamma, we get the results that the Buddha says that are wholesome, that lead towards the end of suffering. And whenever we're like, well, this doesn't sound quite right, I think it's not more practical to exterminate, all the ants in the monastery rather than practice non-harming with the ants in the monastery and inconvenience myself over and over again. Well, whenever we do that, that brings unwholesome results in the mind. That brings unhappiness. That fuels all those defilements of mind. So we start seeing for ourselves, this is not something that we have blind belief in, but the Dhamma actually invites us to come and see for ourselves, to realize it for ourselves. And we don't have to wait until we're fully enlightened. We can have these moments of realization step by step and go, oh, wow, the Buddha's right. The Buddha's right. How incredible, how wonderful. What an amazing being. And we can spend so much time contemplating the incredible qualities of the Buddha. How someone who had, our exact conditions at one point in the past, then was able to overcome them. Some of my favorite suttas are actually when the Buddha talks about himself being an unenlightened bodhisattva with, all sorts of thoughts of greed, hatred, and delusion. And it is so heartwarming because it is so relatable, when he describes those states, and you're like, oh, wow, the Buddha also had those states. He didn't, come to this world that was already pure of mind. He actually had thoughts of greed, hatred, and delusion. But he taught himself how to overcome them. I can do too. That's incredible. I can do so as well because he has taught the Dhamma. It's so beautiful. And then recollecting the Sangha as well. All these amazing beings that have started in, this sort of imperfect state of existence like we have. And followed out of faith, out of, putting so much energy following these teachings, and have attained different stages of liberation, have entered this path. How incredible that it's not only one being who was able to do the work, but this being was able to teach it to other beings, and these beings have practiced. And I too am now in this path. I too am putting effort. I too will attain. If I practice in accordance with Dhamma, it's inevitable to attain the same result. Just recollecting it, now that I'm sharing it, my mind is full of joy. My mind is full of happiness. I'm not grumpy anymore. Yeah, that's great. We should all go and meditate now. And we see the Buddha says, does not have zeal as one of the obstructions. So that eagerness, that interest, the chanda, that is so powerful. Which, by the way, it's exactly what started now in my mind when I was talking about how beautiful the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha is. Why, in fact, it's called the triple gem. So all of this is interconnected. We're not going to go, and now I only practice saddha, and now I only practice chanta, and now I only practice panya. But rather, each one fuels itself. And then the Buddha continues, another obstruction is one has bad wisdom. So no panya. Actually, in Anguttara Nikaya 5.152, the Buddha gives more descriptions on this, just in case we're unclear on what, being unwise is. So he says, one is unwise, stupid, obtuse. One imagines that one has understood what one has not understood. And this reminds me actually of how I fell in love with Buddhism. I remember going to Santa Chittarama monastery. That was the first monastery I went to in this lifetime, which is a monastery in the Ajahn Chah Thai forest tradition right outside Rome in Italy. And I went to the library because I like books. And I picked up this book, which back then I had no idea that there were different traditions. So apparently this was a Zen book. And the first line was, if you think you've seen the Buddha, kill the Buddha, or something along those lines. And my mind was full of joy, actually. Not because of, obviously, the literal meaning of killing the Buddha, but rather because of what it entailed. For some reason, I have a karmic affinity with Zen. So like I don't usually misunderstand the meaning. So I didn't take it literally, which apparently oftentimes it happens when people encounter that suggestion of killing the Buddha. But rather it's, constantly killing our idea of what enlightenment is, our idea of what the Buddha is. So many times, our ideas of what the Dhamma is. Questioning it over and over again. Coming from a country, Italy, where the religion is actually based on dogmas, so not questioning anything that is being told and offered, it was so refreshing and so genius. It was so incredible. Since I was a little kid, actually, as an adolescent especially, I was realizing how there were all these layers of mind where all our ideas were influenced by our upbringing, by, the religion in the area, by the culture, by, what Marx, I remember studying in school, was calling the superstructure. I was finding all these concepts very fascinating. So I was like, but how do we actually eliminate this superstructure? How do we get free of this superstructure? And so the fact that a religion like Buddhism was actually based on dismantling that in ourselves, not on, others, just filled my mind of joy. I was like, this is so incredible. And that they push it to the furthest point of like questioning even the religion in itself. Incredible, wonderful. But it's something that we, aside from cute little quotes that we can Instagram with our friends, it's good to internalize it and really use it as an everyday sort of mantra of going, how are we understanding this? And what is it coming from? Our, past experience that we are, interjecting, we're putting on the Dhamma. I think actually Tanniso, I'm probably going to butcher it, but the other day he was sharing his practice of memorization. Maybe he can talk about it when he will give talks. But I found it very interesting of, I think it was a monk friend that, or him, I don't remember. Anyway, point being, the process of memory, like how useful it was to memorize the actual Dhamma and to remove ourselves from what we think we are understanding, what we think we are memorizing in terms of Dhamma, our understanding of the Dhamma and what the Dhamma actually really means. So I don't know if that actually, if I explained it in correct English, but but it's very much that, always having that aspiration to really truly understand the Dhamma, to make that breakthrough. So then it's irreversible. We attain a state where we cannot, backslide anymore. We're masters of backsliding. Like we always do, like one step forward, 3 steps backwards, steps forward, 3 again backwards. How beautiful it is, just the idea of like never going backwards again. That enlightenment is the only destination. But, when we think of enlightenment, the absence of greed, hatred, and delusion, it can be very overwhelming. Especially once we start dispelling delusion, and then we are like, oh wow, there is a lot of greed and hatred in this mind. Will it ever be possible to completely eradicate it? And we can get very, very distraught. But when we think actually of stream entry, it actually can be pretty, pretty doable. For example, stopping to cling to rites and rituals. We're like, okay, that's doable. I think I can achieve that. Yeah. Or removing skeptical doubt. Yeah. I think I can do that. I'm actually already quite close. Getting closer and closer to completely eradicating it. Having an understanding, experiential understanding of non-self. I can do that. Yeah, this is pretty feasible, isn't it? And so the Buddha then tells us, then he ends the sutta with fundamentally the opposite of what we've said so far. So basically, what are the conditions that propel us towards stream entry? Not having obstructions based on action, so making sure that we're really purifying our actions through body, speech, and mind in every moment. And one does not have obstructions based on defilement because we're not nourishing them. We're nourishing the factors of enlightenment, not the factors of unenlightenment, as we normally like to do. Not giving lots of nutriment to the hindrances in every moment. Not cultivating unwise attention, but cultivating wise attention instead. Mindfulness in every moment. So that leads to not having any obstructions based on the consequence of our actions, because the consequence of our actions will be pretty good. And we'll have faith, zeal, and wisdom populating the mind instead of all, the counter opposites. And that inevitably, all of this inevitably propels us to stream entry. And in this way, monks endowed with 6 things, upon hearing the true Dhamma, one is able to enter the right way in developing good qualities. So when we listen to the Dhamma, and that's also like, we see it in the suttas over and over again, how people meet the Buddha and he says 3 words of Dhamma, really, and they're like, bam, some level of awakening. And we're like, oh wow, it must be some, really weird magical thing. This doesn't happen anymore. Oh no, it's actually these people had done this preliminary work. So then when they listen to the Dhamma, it's inevitable to enter the stream. And it's good to also remember one of my favorite suttas, sutta where the charioteer Channa, is going through all of those karmic obstructions to the point where he is, given the silent treatment from the other monks. But then at a certain point, he's like, well, actually, I need to do something. I need to listen to the Dhamma. Why can't I really experientially understand the Dhamma? I know all this Dhamma. I know all these words of Dhamma, just like the other monks, but there's no level of realization. Let me go to Ananda to ask him for advice. And Ananda gives him this beautiful, well, actually, before even giving him the teaching, he sees that because actually Channa has gotten rid of his arrogance and conceit and has the humbleness, the humility to come and ask for the Dhamma. He says, yes, you are ready to listen to the Dhamma. And Channa says those beautiful words of like, yes, I too am able to listen to the Dhamma. I'm ready. And then Venerable Ananda shares the Gacchanagotta Sutta with him. So beautiful, isn't it? So we can think of ourselves as Channa. So put these conditions in place so we too can understand fully the Dhamma experientially, not as an intellectual exercise, but as something that leads to liberation. All right, so this is what comes to mind this morning. I hope it was useful in any shape or form. If not, well, we have other sutta studies coming up soon.
Thank you, Ayya Soma, for sharing those words of Dhamma with us, and for sharing your enthusiasm, which was felt by the audience online as well. Lots of heart emojis and anjalis. And good morning to some more friends joining in. Michael, as well as Venerable Varapanyo, Monk Life.
Hello, Venerable.
Elaine, Angela, Nancy, Venerable Vimalanyani as well.
Hello, Venerable.
Amaranta, Melissa, Celestina, Ainat, Brittany, our friend.
Oh, good to see you. We miss you, Brittany. Come back.
Yes, quickly. As well as Michael, Saw, Sanjay, and May, as well as Changma, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So at this time, if there are any questions or comments, both on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, feel free to type them in, and I will read them out for Ayya Soma. And so far, Michael says, it's very difficult to say something stupid when speaking on the suttas, in reference to your anxiety about saying something stupid.
Oh yeah, if we stick to the suttas, then it's great. But unfortunately, we have to also do some commentary, and then we're like, oh, my delusion is going to come to the surface, and but we have to laugh about it because it's seriously, we care so much about what other people think, which is just sort of, it's a highlight of how unenlightened we are. So at the very beginning, if we take it too seriously, then we actually very much believe how important it is, the judgment of others. But then when we realize that every single other person is experiencing that, then we're like, oh, actually, I'm not that special. It's just once you get to stages of awakening that you don't care anymore, because you fundamentally do not perceive yourself as this individual being that is so special. It's either extremely good or extremely terrible. Like we always have the conceit of superiority at being the best or the worst.
And Gita says, I've heard it said that one cannot kill a Buddha, but might harm a Buddha like Devadatta did. Is this also your understanding?
Yes, that's my understanding as well. And Bhante Sudhasu nods, so it's proved.
And Nancy says, when listening to the Dhamma online, is it okay to take notes and highlight while listening, or should I just be listening?
Whatever helps you. So look at your mind, what helps you. Sometimes, actually, for me, it changes due to causes and conditions. Sometimes it's actually very helpful for me to not take notes, because maybe my mind in that situation will get too wrapped up with the notes, and then I lose track of what is being shared with me. But some other times, actually taking notes is very useful. It makes me emphasize whatever is being shared. So really look at your mind. That's always the way we make progress. We know if we're making progress or if we're backsliding is by looking at the mind and seeing, are wholesome qualities increasing or are unwholesome qualities decreasing? And if wholesome qualities are increasing, then we keep on doing what we're doing, because that's good. And if unwholesome qualities are increasing, then we should do something else. But if they're decreasing, then it's great. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, whether it's notes or non-notes.
And Celestino had a comment, but it got cut off on our platform and disappeared completely from Facebook. So I'm going to paraphrase, and hopefully that captures the meaning. So Celestino said, the Dhamma can be everything. However, when it's taught to people, it's also directed at something specific, mind's emotions, daily life matters, etc. This can seem very different from when the Dhamma is referring to the Eightfold Path. And it's also confusing when people say they talk about Dhamma. So how does one know the difference? I
don't think I understood the question. Can you paraphrase it maybe?
So that the Dhamma can seem to refer to everything, all things in experience, but also to specific parts of the Noble Eightfold Path, as well as people's experience, personal experience of thoughts, emotions, actions, etc. And it creates a lot of confusion. So how to tell the difference, especially when people say that they're talking about the Dhamma?
Well, I would say, first of all, ask questions. So you can clarify directly from the speaker how they are using this term. And actually, I find that very beautiful in the suttas, that actually the Dhamma means, has so many different sort of connotations. It can be perhaps daunting. I understand that you're having that experience in the way that we really like definitions, right? We like static things and that we can rely to. So the Dhamma is just the teachings of the Buddha, but then the Dhamma is also used for not the teachings of the Buddha. Whoa, wait, how is that possible? Or the Dhamma, once again, the body of like how things are, but then also mental states. I think it's actually a good opportunity to exercise some flexibility of mind, and also not take things for granted, but rather, once again, as an exercise to understand what is it. For example, when we're taking refuge, what are we actually taking refuge in? Well, we're definitely not taking refuge in our mind states, are we? So putting things in context is very important. And when we are unsure, to have the humility of asking around, what is the definition of the Dhamma in this particular context? And why is it used in a different way here? So, but, whenever, so you're welcome to ask that particular question right now, if it's possible, if it's relevant for you, Celestino.
And Michael says, your sharing of your experience, irritations, and frustrations are encouraging and helpful for me.
Yeah, you can always count on me of being a big bundle of unenlightenment.
And Michael also says, Zen Master Dogen Zenji once wrote that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas were just like us at one point. Someday we too will be just like the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Yeah. It's really, at least it really helps me to reflect on that or recollect on that, because otherwise it seems too much, unreachable, daunting sort of experience. But instead, seeing that it's actually possible, it's kind of like the before and after the diet. Like we're before the diet, and then after the diet will be like all ripped and great. It's possible, but it will be difficult, as we are enduring the diet.
And on Instagram, Pantali Vasili says, how to overcome self-doubt?
How to overcome self-doubt. That's a whole Dhamma talk right there. Well, it comes from, first of all, I would say, eliminating self-hatred. So I actually gave a talk a few days ago, so you can find it on YouTube if that is of interest to you. But yeah, fundamentally, self-doubt is connected with self-centeredness, because we don't really doubt unless we really don't like the people, but we really don't doubt the capacity of other people around us to attain awakening. But then we have, I think John Suchito calls it the inner tyrant. Like we have our voice that goes like, "Oh, you're like really terrible." I remember going to this retreat, like a Bhavana society, with a few friends when I was a layperson. And I was turning around and I was like, "Oh, look at Andy. He's like 4th jhana, like perfect posture. Oh my God, like it's so easy for him to have good concentration." And then I would turn around to my right. "Oh, look at Margaret. She must have, all these insights as she's meditating. She's past 4th jhana. She's like uprooting all the defilements at the root. And look at me. I have this big bundle of greed, hatred, and delusion. It's really impossible for me to make any progress." And then after the retreat, we came together and I was like, "Oh, your retreat must have gone really wonderfully." And they're like, "Oh no, it was horrible. I couldn't concentrate on anything." And the other person's like, "Oh yeah, I was having all these like thoughts and emotions, and yeah, I'm a big bundle of mess, but it looked like you were having a great retreat. You must have had, some really good progress." And I was like, "Oh, it's incredible, the stories." And, we're all Hollywood screenwriters when we talk, when we think about other people's experience. And we're pretty, harsh critics of ourselves, in the Therigatha as well, but also the Theragatha. Like there is always these, the stories of the elders before they become enlightened, where they're like, "Oh, I've been like practicing for 25 years. Not even for a second was I concentrated once. I'm like horrible." And then boom, they attain awakening. So we do what is hard to do. We just keep on doing what is hard to do. And also what is easy to do. We do also that. So as to be pleasant. But understanding that we're really not that special, that everybody is going through this. The same, they're all a big bundle of greed, hatred, and delusion, no different than us. So was the Buddha, so were the Bodhisattvas, so were all the Buddhas, all the Arahats in the past. And yeah, we just have to have faith that just like they, managed to follow the instructions and attain awakening, so are we. So it's really, you put 1 + 1 = 2. So we're at the 1. We need to add the 1, then we'll also get 2. But if we're like at 1 and we're like, so much self-doubt because 1 does not equal 2. Well, because you need to put the 1, add the other 1, That's, everybody does the same.
And Angela says, "Thank you for this beautiful talk, Ayya. You always make it so easy to listen to the Dhamma with full attention and zeal."
Oh, you're so very kind. It's just because I read the words of the Buddha. So that's very easy trick to to give a good, interesting talk. Just say what the Buddha says. Quote him.
And Jessica says, "We can cultivate to receive the Dhamma and find liberation. That was lovely and meaningful. Do the work and reap the benefits. Thank you, Ayya." And Brittany says, "I miss you all so much."
Oh, great. Come back.
And Amaranta says, "The receptivity to listening to the suttas must be important. So what do you recommend?"
receptivity, receptività. So
receptive, willing to receive.
Willing to receive the teachings. So what was the question? Sorry.
What do you recommend in practicing this, I suppose, or encouraging this quality?
I, never had a problem with that. As soon as I heard the Dhamma, my mind just delights. So what would I do? Just to reflect on how is it speaking to your experience fundamentally. So, usually if we entered this path, or if we are interested in the teachings for awakening, is because we have an understanding of our suffering. Right? So I would say first we contemplate our suffering. Like we really understand the First Noble Truth. There is suffering. How does that appear in my mind? From the whole spectrum of suffering, from the satisfaction of like not getting what you want. You want a croissant and instead there is like a piece of chocolate cake that you don't like. Maybe this is unrelatable to the majority of people, but it's relatable to Bhante Sumano. We're the only people who don't like chocolate. So that's, mild dukkha on the spectrum of things, all the way to grief. All the way to understanding, my parents, for example, are getting very old. They're 78, almost 79. And it's becoming very tangible to see even how they speak on the phone, how much older they're getting, like the decrepitude sinking in. And so at any time they can pass away. That's a lot of dukkha. Our monastic at Stan, who was about to die, that's a lot of dukkha. Seeing someone in so much suffering, physical suffering for so many days in a row in front of you, and you not being able to help them. That's a lot of dukkha. So fully understanding that and looking at the helplessness, that we can't really do anything about it if we don't train the mind. There is no way out of suffering if we don't practice the teachings. Well, if we don't understand the cause of suffering, and we don't understand that there is a way out of suffering and how to get out of suffering. So once we, I think, really truly understand suffering, then our mind absolutely is alert, wants to listen to the Dhamma. It's no different than if like you cut yourself and you have no idea how to stop the bleeding, and you Google like how to stop bleeding on your arm, you're like very focused and trying to understand like the instructions, right? Because you see the urgency. Any type of physical disease that we have, if we don't have a doctor available and we search for it, but even if actually we have a doctor and we go to the doctor, we're very careful to listen to the directions of the doctor. We're not like, I have cancer, but maybe, wait, when is Gossip Girl going on? Like, let me download that thing. Oh, boring. Okay, so I only have 2 months to live. Okay, boring. No, you don't do that. You're there like, let me hear every single word that this doctor has to say, and let me pay a lot of attention to the cure, how much, how often do I have to put the ointment on, and like after how many hours. My dad, when he had a heart attack and he survived the heart attack, for the first couple of months, like he was like extremely diligent with all of that. Then he got used to it and he's like, maybe I'm not gonna die. But whenever he has problems, I see like, level of urgency. And then, I got used to it. I forget. Level of urgency again. So we want to be always on that level of urgency, not wait until like we are in sort of despair that then we like actually pay attention. So all of that, I guess, contemplating suffering would be my answer. That will arouse energy. And also contemplating that you're gonna die. And there's nothing worse than death and rebirth, like honestly, in the past, in my previous life, within this life, when I was in the YOLO camp, there was actually some relief in the prospect of death. When I would get depressed, I was like, oh, when is death gonna arrive so I don't have to deal with this anymore? But now it's like, oh my God, like now I die and I have to deal with it again. And probably I won't even have the teachings available. This is like really horrible. I have the teachings now. I have the capability of attaining awakening. That's why I got into robes. I was like, better get on the program now instead of waiting other eons hanging out in samsara.
Thank you. And Angela says, can you speak a bit about the dukkha that comes from the fear of failing others? Most of my stress comes from needing to do more and more and work faster and faster to not let down others.
Now that's interesting because I never really had that. So it's difficult. I think it's the perfection syndrome, right? I'm not the best person to talk about that. Let's see if I can say something smart. Now I want to say something smart, so it's not going to happen. Sorry, bad news. Not to let other people down. I don't know. I can just say that the reason why I never experienced that was because I was very much my objective was to be really happy. And I knew that other people's expectation on me were not going to make me happy. So for example, the aspiration for my mother for me to become a lawyer, I was like, you're crazy. Or my mom, actually, she was like, you want to be a lawyer or a doctor? And I was like, a lawyer sounds horrible. And a doctor, I would faint all the time because I had like some real aversion to the inside parts of the body. Maybe now, as I'm practicing Asubha meditation and like with my Buddhist practice, it's getting better, but still not close to that. So it was very clear to me, you really do not know what is best for me. Similar, my partners, I don't know. Everybody who is unenlightened, including ourselves, won't have the best interest of others as their priority. They will have the best interest for themselves. So fundamentally, our parents will have, they'll have a mixed interest. Maybe that's more accurate. Our parents perhaps will say, yes, you should be a lawyer because that will give you some security. Maybe that's like, kind, comes from a good meaning. But fundamentally, they want to have a child that is a lawyer, and they don't want to have a child that is a monk, for example. So it's not necessarily the best interest of the child. It's not a selfless sort of condition, but it's a self-centered interest. So why would we listen to people who are unenlightened, just the way we are? What we want to listen to, who we want to listen to, is someone who is perfectly compassionate, perfectly selfless, like the Buddha. And so then it comes naturally that instead of doing what, the people that we spend time with, in the office or our family or whatever, pressure us into doing, rather we're like, well, what is the Buddha actually pressuring me into doing? Oh, he's pressuring me to remove greed, hatred, and delusion from my mind. That is for the benefit of myself and others. Is being a lawyer for my benefit? I don't know. I don't think so. Is it for the benefit of others? Well, it depends on what kind of lawyer you are, but most often than not quite. Not really. You don't get to pick all of your clients. So sometimes you'll have to defend very unskillful people to make a living. Is it beneficial for myself and others? I don't know. So just go for the sure. Just eradicate greed, hatred, and illusion. Listen to the Buddha. And yeah, that's where you get your motivation. So that's where I also get my motivation with my parents to say, I know that you're really unhappy for me to become a monk. And you tell me, you ask me, you beg me to disrobe multiple times a week. But I'm not going to succumb. It's true. It's a real story. I just laugh about it. I don't even get angry at it anymore. But I'm like, well, it's really actually, I'm a better person. I'm a better child. I'm a better sister. I'm a better everything. Because I listen to the Buddha and I'm not succumbing to that peer pressure. So the Buddha is the only one I should listen to. I hope that helped.
And on Instagram, Silver Lining, I see your question, but it's perhaps better for a monk chat, which will be on Friday at 7:30 p.m. New York City time. Or actually, it might relate to tonight's talk. So if you can join us at 7:30 p.m. tonight, as well, or send us an email or a message on Instagram as well. And Kumu on YouTube says, you mentioned getting rid of wholesome thoughts, increasing the wholesome. Is that right effort, Samma Vayama?
It's the Noble Eightfold Path, really. But yeah, absolutely, right effort is part of it. Because we need to put the right effort to wanting to develop anything or wanting to uproot anything.
And Nancy says, yes, we do what is hard to do. Ayya Soma, you're saying so many things I needed to hear today.
I just say what the Buddha says.
And yeah, lots of thank yous from everyone online. We're very inspired by your talk and your words as well as the words of the Buddha. So thanks everyone for joining us this morning for Sutta study. You can return to our channel at 7:30 p.m. tonight for some guided meditation as well as a Dhamma talk. And then tomorrow morning for Sutta study again, and so on for the rest of the week. But right now we can end with 3 sadhus.
Oh, before we do the sadhu, actually, a special announcement. On Sunday, we'll have a special online retreat with Tan Nisarvo, straight from Thailand. But now he's moved to close to Seattle, right? Great. So he's visiting Empty Cloud for a bit. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll have the opportunity to listen to quite a few of his Dhamma talks. But on Sunday, the whole day, he'll be leading a retreat. So it's a great opportunity to practice and listen to the good Dhamma. All right.
Sadhu. 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 All right, everyone. And thanks for joining us once more, and enjoy the rest of your day.